This is Radiant Voices Media.
This is your permission slip to speak your truth, own your story, and laugh through the chaos. Welcome to the Transparently Jordan podcast. Hi there, and welcome back to the show. Today I'm sitting down with Abbie Gaudry, a professional gymnast and trampoline athlete who's represented Australia on the world stage. Abbie's story is one of dedication, resilience, and pure passion for her sport and everything that she does. In today's episode, we're diving into her journey from how she first got started in gymnastics to what it really takes to perform at a professional level and the challenges she's faced along the way. We'll also talk about the mental side of sport, how she handles pressures, self doubts, and what she learned about herself throughout the years of competing and training. This episode isn't just for athletes, it's for everyone chasing success in the area of life. I know that you're tuning in to this podcast because you chase success on a constant, and this episode can give a whole lot of things to you. There are many lessons that come from sport: discipline, consistency, and learning to get back up after setbacks. So, those things can be applied to everything in life. Whether you are listening to this while running, while driving to work, while chilling at home, settle in for a real, honest conversation. Let's get started. Maybe, Abbie, to the listener who's listening in right now, if they had, let's say, a biography of you right in front of them, maybe tell the listener what they would expect in the biography. Let us know a little bit about yourself.
Okay. I'm a trampoline gymnast. Been doing it for the better part of my life, really, the last 20 years nearly. I also work full-time as a contract specialist for Johnson Controls. And yeah, that keeps me pretty busy.
Yeah. I mean, like, the reason why I wanted to have you on the podcast is because, you being a professional athlete as well as working, I think like a lot of people will get a lot from you. We were just discussing this. We're living in a world where everybody is so busy these days and getting busier and busier. I think, the listener listening right now will probably love to hear how you can kind of fit it in all as well. Um, Maybe start by the just letting the listener listening right now, who is maybe chasing a dream. What is a piece of a mindset that they should try and have to help chase that dream? So, what is your mindset when you are out there competing, when you are out there maybe training to kind of keep you going and perform at the best that you can be?
Mm. I think the mindset at training versus at competition is very similar but very different at the same time. By the time I get to a competition, it's very focused, very present in the moment because all the work prior to that has been done. There's not much more that I can do except focus on the right things and get through the routine as best as I can. Um, in terms of in training and things like that, the mindset, I guess, the most important thing is just to be really precise about what I'm doing and have a clear vision of why I'm doing it and what I want to achieve each and every session. I think when I first started out as a younger athlete, I was just going to training for the sake of going to training and kind of doing what I was told and then showing up the next day and doing what I was told. And the difference between then and now is more I go into a session wanting to get something out of it. And at the same time, I'm obviously working with a coach who's wanting something out of it as well. And I think having the conversation with that person to make sure that we're on the same path, but also so that we can work with each other to kind of fulfill both of those things. So I think having a really clear vision of not only the long-term goals and where I want to be, but breaking that down into smaller pieces, which makes it less daunting for the end goal, but also makes it easier to have like a small achievement that I want to make each day. Yeah.
So what changed for you? Back then when you were just going to trainings, just to go and whatnot,
Mm.
to the person that listening right now, or anybody that might just be going through the motions, but want something more. What changed for you to get from that stage to now going with more purpose into what you're doing?
I think just taking accountability. Um, I think the biggest step that was really hard for me was to verbalize my goals and what I wanted to achieve because that yeah, it gives you a level of responsibility, I suppose, um to put the effort in and put the work in to achieve those because it's out there. People know what you want. And so they can watch you progress and get there and whether you do or not. So it feels really vulnerable, but I think it's a really important stepping stone to taking accountability for then your pathway to getting there. Yeah.
Hmm. I would love to go back. So go back to where it all started because I think that gives good indication of the journey and where you were then versus now. But maybe tell us a moment when you first realized that you wanted to be a gymnast and do it a bit more seriously. What was that moment for you?
Well, I originally started out in artistic gymnastics. So the classic, bars, beam, vault, floor. And I loved it. And when I discovered that trampolining was a sport, it was just like the most incredible light bulb moment because I was like, my favorite hobby is jumping on my backyard trampoline, and this is a sport, and I can do it every day. So I think the passion was there from the get go. It was like my favorite hobby and pastime I can now do as a sport and like competitively. Um, I think in terms of going kind of from being an athlete to an elite level athlete, the change was in the mindset and wanting to achieve more goals, and I think that came from things like watching people at the Olympic Games, realizing that the sport was in the Olympics and that I wanted to get there and things like that, watching my idols compete and do amazing things and then saying to myself, wow, I could maybe do that and I would love to do that. And that's kind of then taking accountability for that and working towards those dreams. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. What was it like back then, training? Like, did you feel back then when you were starting out, any pressures, or was it more just kind of an activity that you did at the side back then?
Yeah, no, I didn't feel any pressure at all. I used to train a lot. Like when I was in school, I was training 10 times a week. And I didn't think that that was weird. Like looking back now, I acknowledge that that's a lot more than normal
Yeah.
people would do while in school. But I think that wasn't because I felt pressure in putting the work in to achieve my goals. It was more just because I loved it. And I've always been someone who really loves hard work, like just loves working hard. Um, call me crazy.
Yeah.
But I just, yeah, I loved the idea of going to training every day, twice a day, and just showing up and learning more things. I guess the one really cool thing about my sport is there's always more to learn, whether that be skills or how to execute them properly. Like there's always more to do and achieve, and so that really kept me motivated.
Yeah, and I guess that's like anything in life. Like if you have that passion, which it sounds like
Mm,
you did, then it makes like work or training or whatever it might be less of a chore in a
yeah,
sense. Like I think there's nothing worse than doing something and it feeling like a chore. I hear all the time, maybe people complaining about their job or complaining about this or that. And I think it might just be that you don't have the passion for that in a sense.
yeah,
So like it's interesting to kind of hear that you had that passion at the early age that you did and that you found it back then, because I think too, like sometimes people are in maybe a sport that they've only been in because, like me for example, I'm Canadian. I feel like every Canadian plays ice hockey or lacrosse, and, like, that's just a sport that I was put in because I feel like every other kid was put in. I don't think, like, now looking back, I had the passion, like, I just did it because it was a sport and,
yeah,
everybody else was doing it at the time, and I did it all throughout high school, but, I don't look back at ice hockey and, like, I haven't played it since, you know what I mean?
yeah.
So, um
That's really interesting because
mm,
As a child, I was kind of scouted for sports more like swimming and athletics that I think physically I probably would have been better tailored to. Um, but yeah, like I said, I just had this passion for gymnastics and for trampoline, so it was a no-brainer.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's also another interesting thing because like it, I think too like there's like a work ethic too. Like if you're more tailored to swimming and that comes more naturally, quote unquote.
Mm.
Um not that gymnastics wouldn't for you, but like I think like that just goes to show the work that you've put in a sense because you could go down the easier route or you could go down the route where you have the passion for it, but you might have to work a little bit harder.
Yeah.
And I think that's just like to the listener listening, that's a good tip there that you could go down the easier route, you could go down the route that makes a little bit more sense sometimes, but like that's not always maybe the route for you at
Mm.
the end. Yeah. Um, when you switched from artistic gymnastics to trampoline, what was that decision like back then? Because that's like you're how old was that? How old were you when
Oh,
you decided you wanted to
I
focus
was
more?
I was 9. Like
Okay.
I was
Yeah.
very young. And so
Yeah.
that was such an instant decision. I
Mm,
literally went to like a holiday program at a trampoline gym one time, which I didn't know existed. And I spent the whole day there. And at the end, one of the coaches was like, "This is a sport." And so I was like, "Okay, I'm switching." Which my mum at the time was like, "Oh my gosh, like you can't do both." Because I was like, "I want to do tramp," and at that point, I was doing like 40 hours in the gym doing artistic. So
mm.
my mum was like, "Oh,
Yeah. Yeah.
we can't fit this in." But I was just like, "I love this, and I
Yeah.
have to do it." Yeah.
Yeah. Did you know at that age at 9 that you wanted to do it like competitively or like go far into it? Because I think like nine's an early age for everyone and for anyone, sorry. And like I think too, like what people are saying nowadays with sport is like, you don't want to specialize or whatever. You want to do as much as you can, blah, blah, blah. But
Mm.
like also too, I think like if you have a passion for something or if you have like a talent for something, then yeah, of course. So did you know at that age that you were, let's say, like the good athlete in that sport and that you wanted to go a bit far? Or what was your mindset if you can remember? I mean, nine's an early age, yeah, like back then.
um, I think it was literally just I want to do this because I love it. I don't think at the time I expected to say be where I am now, or think that it could be a bit of an athletic career. Like I just loved it, and in the moment was like, this is it for me for right now. So no, I don't think I expected to be highly competitive. But I mean, I've always had a very competitive nature, so I definitely was always going to try to be. But whether it worked out or not, I didn't care at the time. I just wanted to.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But maybe fast forward to like competition days around that time.
Mm.
What were competitions like back then for you? Like, were you someone who was quite hard on yourself and you strived for a lot, or what was your drive like back then?
Yeah, I mean, I was experienced in competitions through artistic gymnastics at that point, so I wasn't a stranger to the competition setting, which I think was really beneficial coming into it. Um, and having that experience, mainly with like the strength and conditioning of that component of having 3 years of gymnastics behind me, I was quite successful from a young age. Um, just because I came in with that skill base at a young age already. And so no, I thrived with like I loved competing. And yeah, I really thrived in that kind of scenario. Yeah.
Hey everyone, Jordan here. If you're like me, always pushing for that next level in training, recovery, and overall wellness, then you know the right fuel makes all the difference. That's why I'm excited to share my go-to for clean, powerful nutrition, Tropica. Tropica's range of certified organic supplements is packed with high-quality ingredients designed to fuel your body and elevate your performance. Whether you need a protein boost post-workout, an energy kick to get you through the day, or gut-loving superfoods to keep you feeling your best, Tropica has you covered. I personally love their lean protein because it helps my recovery without the heavy bloating feeling I get from these other proteins that I've had in the past. Plus, everything is free from artificial nasties, so I know exactly what I'm putting in my body. If you're ready to take your health and performance to the next level, check out Tropica today at tropica.com.au. And because I love hooking up all of my listeners, use code JORDSDAY10 for a special discount at checkout. That's JORDZDAY10 at checkout for a special discount. Fuel your body and power your life. Tropica has your back. Thanks, you all. Where fast forward now, when did things start getting a bit more serious for you? At what age was it?
Honestly, probably about 4 years ago, like
Okay.
really recent. I mean, I've been at an elite level for 15 years now, I'd say, like a long time. But I think if I am really honest with myself, where I really took that next step was about 4 years ago, 4 or 5 years ago when I moved to Adelaide. And I kind of that's when I had that conversation with my team and my friends and family where I was like, this is what I want to achieve, and kind of took accountability for that and said, it's later in life now. I'm not a 9-year-old just wanting to jump on a trampoline. Like, this is a big component of my life, and this is what I want to get out of it, and I'm going to put everything into it. And then that's when things changed, really. That's when things became much more high performance based because I was seeking those one percenters and support inside and outside of the gym, and really like it became a lifestyle. Yeah.
What was the like leading up to that moment, that that conversation that you had with your friends, with your family, your coaches? What in your head got you to the moment that you were like, okay, I want to take this, further. I want to go all the way with this. Was there anything specific for you?
I mean, honestly, it's there's not a lot of money or support in this sport. And so that was the biggest decision because I obviously have a life outside of gymnastics, and doing the sport affects that. Because, like I said, it's a lifestyle. And so I basically had a conversation with my now husband, but my partner at the time. And I just said, look, this is what I want. It's kind of a decision for both of us to be making because it affects him. It affects our relationship, our time together, financially, both of us, it affects us. And kind of was like, will you come on board for this next cycle? And this is what I want. And so it had to be a bit of a team decision. Um, and I think that that's what made the change. It's like it kind of was starting to impact more than just myself. Yeah. And so it was like more than myself that was committing to these goals. Yeah.
Mm. And I think that just goes to show like the importance of having people around you, I guess.
Mm,
That's like, in any sport. Like I appreciate that, like being a triathlete myself, and I have a half Ironman coming up, and training 16, 17 hours a week, like it gets in the way of like work balance, of the podcast, of like friendships and relationships and things like that. So I
mm,
totally appreciate, like, you kind of have to have that conversation with your support system. um Also, like me as well, like I remember talking back, this was a few episodes ago, somebody was saying that, like, they have the conversation with their friends, their family, saying that, like, look, this is the goal, this is the date that I have, like, I apologize if things, like, get in the way, or like I say no a whole lot of time, but like setting those boundaries and letting people know that this is what you're working towards, I think is a good tip as well.
yeah.
Because your support system's your support system. Like they're probably going to be behind you whether you make a decision or not. So it goes to show, like, I appreciate what you said there, like the
Mm.
importance of your support system, really. Um, what since you've taken this a bit, further, and you've gone all in, what does professional mean to you? So what does that world look like for you, and what's the idea of it for you?
It's a good question because I mean, I probably wouldn't describe it as professional in that I'm certainly like it's a lifestyle and my life revolves around the sport and that feels like a profession and a career in itself. But I'm not getting paid to do what I'm doing. And so at the same time, I have a full-time job to pay for things. And although I'm getting some financial support now that I'm at the top of the sport, that doesn't pay for my life and my training and domestic competitions and everything that comes with it. So that I guess the professional side of things is more the lifestyle and the accountability that I take in the rest of my life to do things externally that are going to benefit me in my sport, I guess, and to create that environment around me physically and with the people and the support systems that are going to get me further in the sport and towards my goals, I guess. That's what feels like the professional side of it.
Yeah, and I'd love to get into that a bit deeper because you're not the only athlete that's come on here and said that, right? Like
Mm,
I've had Olympians come on here and say that, even at their level they are working full-time, part-time to pay for it. It's not, and I think like that's something that as like me a viewer, you'd watch like a trampolinist on TV or you'd watch like the Olympics or, something and you'd think that, oh, if I don't know, the NBA players are getting paid, like all professional quote unquote athletes are getting paid, but that's not the case really. Like a
no.
lot of the times you're working full time and then training the same level, if not harder, than like, professional athletes that are getting, paid for it. So
Mhm.
what are some other things that like the listener that's listening in doesn't know about that world. So what are some things that other sacrifices and stuff that you guys have to make, I guess?
Yeah, well, I mean, like I said, it is a lifestyle and you mentioned before with the support system around you and your friends and family, it's really important to vocalize your goals and kind of what you're doing to achieve them so that they're understanding as well, like there are sacrifices you have to make. I've missed a few close friends' weddings and, important events and things like that, and it's hard, but at the end of the day, that's you can call it a sacrifice, but it's also a choice that I'm making because I'm wanting to move towards these goals of mine. And that's going to get me there by maybe not going to certain things. Um, and so, yeah, I think it's a bit of an accountability piece in that sense, in making sure that everybody's on board and on your side. And I guess when you have that conversation, you can see kind of expectations back from yourself as well. And that continues in the workplace. Like my work is very flexible in terms of, taking leave to go on these competitions and things like that, navigating appointments and stuff when I need to. So I think it's really important to have those conversations to make sure that everybody's kind of in your corner and aligned with what you're doing. Yeah.
Hmm. What is that work life balance for you? So, I know like for you it's probably more like work in a sense. But like what is that? Because like working full time and then training, I assume before and after work, what does your life look like right now? I guess for the person listening.
It's very busy.
Okay.
um, it's very busy. And a lot of the time it does feel like work, and it's exhausting. But I think the good thing is that my work and my training are very separate worlds. And so in a sense, it's a good way to switch off from each other. And they both complement each other in certain life skills and things like that too. So, but yeah, I mean, for example, my days usually are from 5:30 to 7. I get up and I go to the gym at 6 a.m. I work from 8 till 4, and then I'm training on the trampoline from 4:30 to 7. They're long days. And then come Sunday, I'm just written off. I'm exhausted. So I think the balance is hard, and I definitely still haven't got it right. I experience burnout and things like that, and I'm still kind of trying to figure out the right balance. But um, I've just tried to really focus on recovery and making sure that I'm getting, it's as simple as getting good quality sleep, hydration, nutrition, fitting in things like ice baths and stuff when I can, which are really important too. But the main things, it's just like prioritizing sleep and rest and recovery so that I can actually be able to do all of this because it's physical and mental toll, really.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. Is there anything else, I guess, mentally? Because like burnout, for example, I think could be something that's high, in the back of some people's minds who are performing that extently. Is there anything else like mentally that you've learned over the years of practicing this that kind of gets you through like, waking up in the morning and being like, nah, just like skip this morning, or because
Mm.
like I think that's too a domino effect. You don't want to do that. And like I think a lot of people have something that they've adopted to try and push through that. What's that for you that kind of keeps you going even on the days that, might be a bit more difficult than others?
I think, firstly, I've been doing this a long time, and so I'm kind of able to know my own body a little bit better and understand when maybe I need to take that session off, like to benefit the future sessions and just like my mental health and well-being. And then the other times when I maybe don't want to, but I can acknowledge that it's something that I can do, and kind of just knowing the difference between when I need to not do it and when I need to do it, and both of those for a positive outcome, I guess. Um, but in terms of the motivation, I think that's why it's important to have those little goals that are broken down on the way to the big goals, so that it's not as daunting looking at this big goal and saying, oh, I'm so far away from it. And, maybe it's easier when you're looking that far ahead to skip a gym session or something. But when you've got these little incremental goals on the way, they keep you on track. Yeah.
Absolutely. Is there anything else like um anything, let's say, when you are like getting through the week and you mentioned recovery is quite important for you, how do you, I guess, sprinkle in recovery throughout the week? Like what does that look like for you? Do you have dedicated days? Do you have dedicated like this is the day that I go for physio or whatever? Like what does that look like for you, the recovery side of things?
Yeah. Yes and no. So at the moment, in terms of like hot and cold recovery, like exposure therapy recovery and things like that, I tend to do them after most gym sessions in the mornings, um, which is a really easy way to get it in because I'm already at the facility, because I train at the Sassy facility, which is incredible. So yeah, getting the hot and cold recovery sessions in after gym sessions is one thing. Sometimes I'll do them after trampoline sessions in the evenings too. Um, the good thing about my sport is it requires a lot of flexibility. And so I'm stretching most days, which really helps. Well, every day I'm stretching, and that really helps with recovery. Um, and I guess it's just the main other things are just focusing on my nutrition, particularly like refueling after a training session, making sure that I'm recovering, getting enough hydration, and then sleep. I track my sleep um, so that I can see the quality, and that kind of can help me also assess the intensity that I come into the next day with. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Was Sassy the reason why you wanted to come to South Australia, or was that a different reason?
Oh, I actually just moved during COVID.
Okay. All right. Yeah.
Yeah, I was in lockdown in Melbourne for
Mm,
months,
yeah.
and they opened the borders for 24 hours, and most of my husband's family were over here at the time, and so we were just like, we originally were just coming for a few weeks to escape the last lockdown in Melbourne, and the plan was to move back. But I loved it. I loved it here. I didn't expect to. um, but yeah, I just kind of was like, let's stay here. This is awesome. And the training and like Sassy support has been absolutely integral, I think. And that's particularly another reason why my performance and kind of level has escalated in the last few years, because I've had that team around me. Yeah.
Yeah. And that was like my next question to the listener listening right now that might be aspiring to, get into maybe something a bit more professionally, or, wanting to take that next step. What kind of things does South Australia have to offer for athletes in that sense? I know Sassy being one of them, but
Mm.
is there anything specific that like Sassy provides that, you wouldn't need to move to like Sydney or Melbourne for, if you know what I mean?
Yeah, well, particularly like Sassy's just recently upgraded their facility, and it's incredible. Like insane. And I think it's competitive with the bigger state institutes across Australia. So that's definitely a huge plus. And I find that particularly, for example, in gymnastics, it is difficult to get institute support in the States unless, they have limited spots because there are so many athletes. And um, that's one thing that Sassy's been really, really good at is they have the individual athlete program, which we're a part of, and they kind of cover all bases. Like there's a lot of athletes that get a lot of support. And I think it's for me personally, it's to another level than what I've experienced in other states. And it's been incredible. It's very, yeah.
That's yeah, very important because I've heard that a few times from people who have said that there's been a few people who have gone to the Olympics that have been on and said that they've moved to South Australia from Melbourne or whatever because of Sassy and whatnot. So that's very
Mm.
interesting to hear how good it is really. Um, for someone like you who is competing, I guess technically individually, like you're not on the trampoline with other people or anything like that. Like it is an individual sport, but I assume again, you have your team behind you and everything. Like what does that feel like being, by yourself but then not in a sense? Like how do you still kind of keep going in a sense in a sport that is so individual?
Yeah, I think the good thing about having that team behind me, it kind of helps give me confidence, I guess, in my own abilities and things like that. Because, say, like for example, I've got medical team behind me, and if I'm managing injuries, which most athletes we usually are, things like that, there's just a confidence to that where something can be dwelling in the back of your mind, and having professional team on your side can really make that difference in confidence for your performance. Um, and I think if you've got people in your corner, even if it's your friends and family who have common goals to you, like they want you to achieve it as much as you do, it's only going to benefit you. Like it is an individual sport, but the more support that you have from other people, the better you're going to perform, because it does make a difference. Mainly, like it mental that mental awareness in such a technical sport as well. Like yeah, having the confidence and the backing of other people makes a huge difference.
Absolutely. Is there any other gymnasts on the trampoline here in SA, or are you primarily?
Yeah, no,
Yeah.
we've got starting to develop a bit more of a squad actually based here, which is awesome. We've got athletes that have stepped up to senior in the last couple of years. So that's been really good. And as a state, at the national championships the last few years, we've really started to pick up our game in the team events and stuff like that, which is really awesome because the number of athletes compared to a lot of the other big states is just we're a lot smaller in SA, but um, the quality is there, which is really exciting.
Right.
Mm.
Right. So what I'd like to do is maybe go back to the work-life balance side of things because to the listener right now that might be thinking, "Oh, I just don't have time." Like I just don't have time, yada yada yada. Like I totally understand not everybody has the same 24 hours, in the sense that everybody's lives are so different. I could never imagine what it's like having two children or what it's like working two jobs or whatever. Like, I understand we don't have the same 24 hours, but also we do. So, to the person listening right now that is constantly battling with, I don't have enough time, what are some tips or strategies that you have for that listener?
It's hard. I mean, it's hard. Everyone, like you said, is in a different situation. I think that if you want something enough, you can make the time. And that is like a naive perspective. Like you said, I don't have a lot like dependents and things like that. But um, yeah, I think you can adapt the things that are already existing to make time for other things. And I think you'd be surprised once you get into a routine and it becomes a habit, it doesn't feel like such a task and it doesn't feel so time consuming. And things become more efficient and maybe don't take as much time as well. But I think it's once it becomes a habit, once you make time for something and it becomes a habit, it doesn't feel like you've actually changed much for it, if that makes sense.
Yeah. No, I love
Yeah.
that really because that's one thing that I like from friends and family get. Oh, how do you wake up at 5 a.m., Jordan, and go for a run or go for a 3 hour cycle or go to the pool? And I'm like, well, it's habit. Exactly like you were saying. Like
Mm.
it feels more strange to me if I don't do it. Like if I don't know, have a random appointment or something and it messes up with my normal routine, then I'm like, by the end of the evening, I'm like, what the heck just happened? Like,
Yeah.
I'm out of habit. And, but like you were saying that it's so like, it's just something that I naturally do now. It's like, okay, if I have to make plans or an additional plan, it'll be like sprinkled in. It won't be like in replace of the habit that I already have. So I really appreciate that tip there. How do you or is there anything of significant that you've had to battle with over the years, whether it be injuries or performance slumps or times that you just wanted to quit? Like, was there anything that has stood out for you that you've had to overcome in that regard?
Yeah, I think the most prevalent is injuries for sure. It's a high impact sport, and when things go wrong, they can go very wrong. And thankfully, I haven't had any like super major injuries, but yeah, they are big setbacks. You know, when you get something major where you have to take time off training and maybe miss a few competitions, it's frustrating, but it's also isolating because you're no longer part of that regular day to day training environment. You know, you're doing rehab instead of training. You're doing all this cross training that you're not used to doing and maybe not as passionate about. And it feels like really hard work physically and mentally to work through that. But um, what I try and focus on in those times is finding things that I can improve during that time. It's like, well, this time off is a blessing because now I can focus on something I maybe don't have time to do when I'm in full training. Whether that's, you know, make improvements in the gym and strength and conditioning or something like that, or working with a sports psych to work on visual techniques or something like that. I try and use it as an opportunity so that I'm not like sitting in that negativity in that dark space because they can be really tricky. So injuries are the main thing. But also like mental setbacks, like not making a competition, not maybe achieving a goal that you've been working for so long towards. And even just coming off the back of a major high event, a lot of people don't realize there's such a big emotional come down off those. And it's so normal for athletes, but it's not very spoken about. So, you know, you have athletes that talk about going to the Olympics and coming home and just going, like, what now? Like, it's such a big change. So, um, yeah, those are really prevalent. And I think they're just as hard as working through a physical injury for
Yeah,
sure. Yeah.
yeah. What does that like? I can understand what that feels like. Like, you're working towards something so like high as a competition, a peak, and then yeah, that come down. But like, uh, is it like difficult for you to then get back going, or what's that process like for you?
Sometimes, yeah. Sometimes off the back of a major event, if I know that I'm working towards another one, I will sometimes skip that break afterwards because it feels so much harder to pick back up and start from the bottom again. Um, and sometimes it's really important, vice versa, to like take that time to just mentally reset before you start the grind again because it can get like training is repetitive and it becomes monotonous. And although my sport's very exciting and like high adrenaline, it's repetitive, particularly leading into a competition. You're doing the same stuff most weeks. Um, and that can get really tiring and like it's hard to stay motivated. So um, yeah, and I think during those times it's about firstly prioritizing recovery and rest in between to make sure that you're like mentally able to be up for the challenge as well as physically, but then also just really revisiting those goals and making sure you know your why and why you're showing up because like it's tough to show up on every day. Yeah, for sure.
Have there been any highs, like any favorite moments, whether it be in competition or training, that stick out for you?
Yeah, definitely. Um, what sticks out for me is I did these back to back World Cups. I basically hadn't been to a World Cup, hadn't made a team in like 7 years, I think it was. It was a long break between kind of competitive and um, on an international stage, I mean. And going into it, you know, I felt like one of the only people that was backing myself because I'd had this big gap people didn't take me seriously. They warned me that maybe I wasn't going to be making these teams and to be focusing elsewhere. And I think the competitions I was really successful. Like I made 2 international like finals, individual finals, got a synchro medal. Like it was amazing. And so I remember the comp for that, but I think I mainly remember it because I really backed myself into that process. And it just felt like more of an achievement that I was focusing on the right things and really like having confidence and faith in myself, being like, I can do this. And it doesn't matter what anyone else thinks.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Is that like that mindset? Was that something that like that just that competition you took into, or is that a mindset that you try to have with every competition?
Definitely. I think I definitely used to have a bit of an outlook of like trying to prove people wrong. And that can get so draining because you're focusing on what other people think, which is outside of your control. And so I think in the last few years, particularly, that's something that I've tried to change and kind of just, you know, try to prove myself right instead. And I think that's just a slight focus shift on what I can control and what I'm doing and just putting in the work to back myself. Yeah.
Mm. Do you
Yeah.
get nervous at all? Like when you're on a national stage and international stage even, which is even bigger, like do you get nervous and how do you like combat nerves?
Yeah, I get very I get very it really depends. Like I can't pinpoint when I'm going to be really nervous and when I'm going to feel really calm. Um And I think no matter how prepared I am for a comp, you can't ever control how you're feeling in the moment. Sometimes even the atmosphere can change how you're feeling. So um, I have like a competition ritual and routine. And no matter how I'm feeling, no matter how I'm preparing for the comp, I'm always doing the same thing on the comp floor. Um, there's like mental routine of visualization, there's breath work that I'm doing, and then just like little cues that I'm saying to myself to focus in on what I'm doing, and then like physical cues, even just grounding myself because at a competition my mind's running wild, and at the end of the day you kind of need it to be almost blank. So it's just focusing on really being present in the moment and thinking about what's happening only right now. Um, and our routines go for like 30 seconds. So it's so important that you're in the moment. Otherwise, it's like the routine's done. Yeah.
Mm.
So,
Yeah, and that's amazing. Like to think again, like if you're watching like someone like you on TV or on YouTube, you don't realize that A, it's only 30 seconds, but B, like there's this whole build up to it. And then 30 seconds goes by for us like that. But I'm sure like for you guys, it's a lot different in that sense. And I guess nerves too, like it builds adrenaline, so it's okay, but then it either makes or breaks. Like it can go one way or the other.
yeah.
And and I assume it's the athletes that, can get through the nerves, like the negative effects that kind of strive in a sense.
Mm.
Um, is there anything else that you like try to control before a competition or anything that you just try and manage that that okay, this is something that like I can control, like your mindset, for example, that like I know is not going to go wrong because like it's in my control.
I think the only real thing that I can control is the training that I'm doing and the recovery and stuff that I'm doing in the lead up. Like, for example, traveling overseas for a competition. Coming from Australia, it's a long haul. It's always a long, long time traveling. And so making sure I'm doing the right things on the plane, like, hydrating, taking my electrolytes, wearing my compressions, doing things like that, trying to be on a bit of a sleep schedule to be able to recover when I'm over there. Um, Sometimes in training before competitions, I'll try and replicate the feeling of nerves, which is a tricky one, but it kind of like nerves kind of give you the jitters. And sometimes I'll just try and convince myself that, something really important's happening, or I'll film a routine and say, this is the audience kind of thing, and kind of just psych myself into thinking it's really full on. And other times, even just like physically exhausting myself sometimes before getting on the tramp, like literally where you're feeling a little bit shaky because you're a bit exhausted. It's it's slightly different, but it's a similar feeling. And I think if you do little things like that and you're consistent in your training, you're more confident in the competition arena where you're like, I've can do it when I'm feeling like that. I can do it now. I can do it whenever. Yeah.
Hmm. Throughout all of these moments, like these high stake moments, these, moments where you've achieved things and you've competed, what are some key takeaways? What are some things that you've learned about maybe yourself throughout kind of this journey so far?
Oh. um, I think what I've learned about myself, I think, is how resilient I can be. And I think, yeah, the biggest thing, like I kind of touched on before, is kind of backing myself and being my own cheerleader, and not necessarily relying on anyone else to be that. Um, yeah, I think for for our sport particularly, like it's the most important thing is focus when you're at a competition. And so I think the biggest things that I've learned is that the mental training side of things is just as important, if not more sometimes than the physical side. Um, and I used to try and do everything myself, I guess, and I felt like that was a strength to do everything myself. And as soon as I learned to lean on other people and learn from other people and get insights into um, the one percenters and how to mentally train myself to be stronger as well, that's when things really like improved, I think. And so I think I've just learned to back myself in and rely on others and take advice and guidance from others, because at the end of the day, like, yeah, that's going to get you there.
Absolutely. And I know like you've alluded to this many times before that, you have a why, that's what keeps you going and drives you forward, but what is that motivation for you and what is your why, I guess?
That's a good question. um, I've always had big goals in the sport in terms of competition, like going to the Olympics, making a world champs final. Like there are all these really big goals that I'm working towards constantly, I guess. Um, but I also like I have a goal at the moment, which sounds kind of funny, but like I go into each training session trying to remember, like I try and remind myself that I love the sport, because like I said, it's hard work, it's tiring, you don't always want to be there, like it's not always fun, and like yeah, it's not always good sessions either. And so I try and remind myself every day at the moment that I love the sport and I'm here because I want to be doing it. And I guess that makes me feel more motivated to then achieve those goals that I've set. Um, if that makes sense.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. To the person listening right now that wants to commit something to something, whether it be work, whether it be a sport, whether it be art or whatnot, what should that person tell themselves to make that commitment?
I think I I think honestly, like you're worth chasing your own dreams and your own goals. Like I think if you want something, you're the only person that's in your own way at the end of the day. And obviously, again, everyone has their own circumstances, and sometimes things are going to be easier or harder to achieve. But um, yeah, if you want to do something, do it. The biggest step is the first step.
Yeah.
Yeah, in
Yeah,
just getting started.
I love that. Like you're worth it.
Yeah,
Really, it doesn't need to be nothing else needs to be said. I
yeah.
think really. Um what kind of mistakes do you think people should expect? Like when they're ready to make a commitment, when they're wanting to go after something, what mistakes do you think people are to expect and how should they get past mistakes?
I think just looking at them like they're a learning, like instead of seeing a setback or maybe like not achieving something as a failure or a mistake. It's like as long as you learn from it, it's not a failure. And I think no one can, well, very rarely can someone be the best at something straight away or like know everything about something immediately. Like it takes time and practice and learning, and you kind of need to fail to succeed. Like it's just a stepping stone. So I think just remembering in the moment that as long as you're learning from it and like using that to your benefit, then yeah.
Yeah. And I know you alluded to this next question as well in the past, but how can people stay consistent? So, like, I know eventually things will become habits, and, then it's a no brainer. It just kind of continually moves on. But, like, how do people achieve that consistency when they're first starting something?
I think building up slowly. I think the biggest thing about not being able to maintain consistency is when you just throw yourself into the deep end and like change. For example, you're like, I want to go to the gym regularly, and all of a sudden it's like, I'm going to go to the gym every day. So it's like 0 to 100. Um, and that's not going to be sustainable because you're not setting your like self up for success really. Like you got to gradually get there. And once it becomes um, more of a lifestyle, then it's easier to be consistent because it's just your lifestyle, rather than throwing yourself into something immediately and going from 0 to 100 and burning out or finding it like, too hard. If it's a physical thing, then you're going to be sore and things like that. I think it's just gradually working your way up to something so that you can make it more of a, like, you can have more longevity in it, I
Yeah,
guess.
I
Yeah.
love that. I think too, like some people are the type that needs to go all out sometimes, but I think for
Mm.
a lot of people that what you just mentioned is key. Like if you take it in small steps, like you're gonna as a physio, like, when I give somebody an exercise, I always tell them, I only expect you to do it 2 times a week. You know what I mean? Like I know if you do it, if I say 7 days, it's not going to get done. Like small steps, really. So, like,
Yeah.
I think that goes for anything in life. I love that one. I'd love to get into quickly, like, what does your season look like? Are you always training at such a high intensity? Do you have periods like where you have lower periods, or what does your season generally look like?
Yeah, that's the hardest part about our sport is like it's constantly on season.
Right.
Our competition calendar runs from February to November. So although it kind of seems like you get December, January off, like you need to be comp ready in February. So it's pretty much constant, which can be so draining. But we also work with Olympic cycles. So some years are more full on and more important than others. Um, Being in Australia, we don't tend to send a team to like every international event. So where countries that are more professional, they in terms of like paid to do the sport, they will be doing like the full World Cup series and things like that. So they will be going to every competition, um, which is just not so realistic for like athletes in Australia that are working and studying and doing all the other things. So we Gymnastics Australia will kind of create a calendar and select certain events that they think are important for the year, and we go based off that. So, um, yeah, for example, leading into the Olympics, the qualification period is really full on. It's like a 2 year cycle, like process, and so those will be a lot more. Um, there'll be a lot more competitions in those phases, and then the next 2 years will be a little bit lighter on. So, kind of depends where you're in the four-year cycle, but there's not a lot of breaks. And we try and look at the calendar at the start of the year and schedule in that time where we can maybe have a bit of downtime after a competition because it's so important. Like you can't just keep going consistently. Um, and I think it's also important to target the events that you want to be at a slightly higher level, I guess, and then acknowledge that if competitions are back to back to back, you can't be peaking at all of them. So just acknowledging that you'll be at a certain level for some of them and then try and really be making the PBs and hitting higher scores at the others. Yeah, being
That was
selective.
because that was my next question was like, if you're competing year round and there's so many events, like you were saying, you can't expect to peak or like, gold medal in every single one of them.
Mhm.
How do you choose which ones that okay, this is the one that I'm gonna go for? Like, is there a cycle that that you're like in, or what does that decision, how is that decision process?
We tend to have what we call benchmark events each year. So that's usually the national championships and then the world championships. Um, and then everything in between that, like international comps and things like that, you're obviously trying to do your best and peak for those. But those are the two what we consider benchmark events in terms of performance for those that are kind of expected to be the highlights, I suppose. And they aid in qualification for all the other events as well. So the hard part is that nearly every competition that we're doing is a qualifier for another competition. So we do need to be at a certain level all the time. So yeah, it's hard, it's hard work.
Yeah, no, I can only imagine, really. And I think a lot of like the listener listening can only imagine too. Like it's insane to think like you have to be doing that year round in a sense. And even the what 2 months or 3 months that you don't like you were saying, you have to be competition ready in February. And I
Mm.
assume like even if you take 2 weeks off, like you probably lose a lot of the gains that you've gained, in 2 weeks. It takes like what 4 or 5 days to lose it. So like that's
Yeah.
yeah, that's insane, really. What kind of things are you doing outside, like at 7:38 or whatever when you get home from training? What kind of things are you doing to unwind and prep for the next day?
Um, oh no, I just get home and collapse.
Yeah, okay.
No.
That's very fair.
um, no, I guess it's pretty structured. Like I'll be having my dinner recovery meal and doing whatever I need to be doing. Like if it's doing an ice bucket or something like that, just the little things that I tick off when I get home. And then to unwind, I love reading. That also helps me sleep. So it's kind of tick tick. But then just spending time with my husband and friends and family when I can, to switch off as well. That I think it's really good to be able to separate um, sport and life and be able to have that social life outside of that. I think, yeah, because it gets so full on and busy sometimes that you need to almost structure in having time with your friends and family. So
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's amazing. Like I think the whole conversation and everything that you've brought up is so good because, to the person that's listening, I think whether you're an athlete or not, or, whoever you are, I think you can learn a lot through sport and a lot through like the resilience, like you were saying, that it gives you. You can learn a lot about like the drive and a lot about just like the routine as well. Like I think a lot of people can get things from sport, that whether it be like, you doing a sport or not, like just listening in, you can get a lot of tips from here. So where can people follow you, Abby, and find you?
um, I'm on Instagram,
Okay.
which
Yep.
is my handle is just underscore Abby Watts,
Mhm.
and that's pretty much it.
Awesome. Well, that'll be in the show notes, and you can follow Abby's journey and her competition, I'm sure there. But yeah, thank you again for coming on. I think, like I was saying, the listener will get a lot from this, and I think like anybody, whether it be somebody who's in business or athlete or aspiring athlete, like I think you can get something from what you've brought to the podcast today. So thank you.
Thank you so much for having me.
All right, and that is it for today's episode. I want to thank you for tuning in and listening. If you are listening on Apple Podcast or Spotify, please scroll to the bottom, hit that 5-star review button. It helps out the podcast, it shows your support, and it only takes 5 seconds. Be sure to head to the show notes. You can, of course, find Abby's Instagram link. You can find the links to all of the sponsors. Thank you to the sponsors for coming on board, supporting the podcast, and thank you for coming and listening. I will talk to you in the next episode. To all of my people out there that are driven and goal oriented, you probably already know the importance of reflecting, about reflecting on your failures, about reflecting on your successes, and how that can shape your future. I am somebody that loves journaling. I have tested out and I've used numerous journals. I've probably spent hundreds of dollars on journals, finishing a journal and moving on to the next one. The issue is that some journals have aspects to it that I love, but then other things that I don't use and I don't think are effective. Another issue is A lot of journals are just the same activity every day for 50 days or whatever, and I don't feel like I'm getting much between day 1 and day 50. That is why I created my own journal called The Courage to Be Seen. This journal is a 20-day experience. My goal of this journal is to allow you to really reflect and look over your lifespan of stories and things that have shaped you to who you've become now. Reflecting on experiences, reflecting on your journey to help rewrite your future. This journal is coming out very soon. Be sure to follow The Courage to Be Seen on Instagram to stay updated when the journal release date is.